So, one more round for Rabbi Friedman here. It's been kind of a slow month. There's not a lot of stuff that I'm particularly interested in responding to, but I've been having a blast lately with Mr. Friedman just because of the sheer level of contradiction in his arguments. I mean, what I've looked at so far has been really top-tier stuff, not even like a whiff of concern for the quality of arguments. He just seems to say whatever random nonsense pops into his head and then sit there for 8 seconds smugly smiling without saying anything. So what I'm looking at here might take a little bit of explanation as to why I'm bothering, because it's a video from 2019 called Rabbi Destroys Richard Dawkins. Now, there must be thousands of these videos out there. If I wanted to spend my time defending Richard Dawkins, I could probably spend the rest of my life doing that. I'm not inclined to do that because, for one thing, I don't really care about Dawkins, and for another thing, he can defend himself if he wants. I wouldn't have even bothered to watch this video, except for the fact that in the last video of Rabbi Friedman's that I responded to, he brought up a debate between a rabbi and a famous atheist, and at first I thought it was Hitchens, but I couldn't find anything of Hitchens saying what he said the atheist said, even though it sounded kind of like Hitchens. And so I went looking for stuff about Dawkins versus a rabbi, and I still didn't find anything that sounded like what Rabbi Friedman says the atheist said in the debate, but I did find this video, Rabbi Destroys Richard Dawkins, and I thought, hey, well, if Rabbi Friedman's talking in another video about Richard Dawkins, maybe he talks again about this debate, but maybe provides a few more details that I could use to find it. And so I watched this whole video, and there were no more details about the debate, but I realized, wow, this is a really bad video in its own right. And the reasons why don't have much to do with Dawkins, but they have a lot to do with Rabbi Friedman.
So Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist, I just saw this quote. I was wondering what you thought about it. He says, "We are all atheists about most of the gods that humanity has ever believed in. Some of us just go one god further."
See, we are all atheists in most gods. That's correct, because the second commandment is, thou shalt have no other god. So by not believing in all the other gods, we're actually doing what God wants. And even questioning him is part of what he wants. If you don't see me, ask. That's what God is saying, right? Find me. Ask around.
Alright, figured I'd get that out of the way right up front. That's basically the extent of his actual response to the question. Kind of an interesting response in light of the last Rabbi Friedman video I did, where when asked what kind of proof he actually has for the existence of God, mainly he just berates anyone who would ask it by saying that's an unintelligent question, life's not about proof, that's childish, everyone in the universe believes my thing, so it's true. You know, even questioning him is part of what he wants. If you don't see me, ask. Ask around. Well, that's what I'm doing. That's what Dawkins has been doing. That's what all of us have been doing. Talking to people directly or watching videos of people presenting their evidence. We don't see the evidence, so we look around. We ask around. We see what's already been put out there in videos, in books, whatever format, and also actually talk to people. And in return for us doing what God apparently wants, you call us stupid and childish and tell us life's not about proof, and just to believe it because everyone else does. You don't see any problem with this, any kind of a contradiction? You don't notice that you're basically telling me something that sounds nice, but then completely ignoring it when it matters? And it's funny because you basically agree with that Dawkins quote, that you're an atheist with regard to all those other gods. Not only do you not believe they exist, you believe they don't exist. And if that's a rational conclusion, you must have reached it through some kind of rational means, which, for one thing, is sufficient enough to make you think the thing is likely true in the first place, and then also is so much greater than the evidence for all those other gods that you discount them completely, while becoming totally convinced of the existence of yours. Again, this is what you would do if this was a conclusion reached through reason, but considering that you apparently think asking for evidence is unintelligent and childish and life's not about that, so shut up, I don't really see how it would be that. But either way, Dawkins is right. You reject all those other gods, thousands of gods, and accept one, and we reject all those other gods, all those thousands of gods, and also your one. And most of the reasons for rejecting all those other ones apply to your thing as well. So because you and I do the same thing in almost every instance, it really shouldn't be something that's surprising to you, that you object to terribly much. It shouldn't be something you call unintelligent or childish, especially when you also claim to believe that doubting God and questioning his existence and asking questions designed to figure out what the evidence is for him is what God wants. And yet when people actually do that, you seem to get annoyed. That's what we saw last time. Okay, but now for something completely different, and this will happen several times throughout this video because for some reason we can't just stay on one topic.
So the atheist, I don't know if you agree with this, but The atheist doesn't really have an opinion on God. He can't.
The atheist, like as if atheists are a monolith. I have lots of opinions about God. I express different opinions about different types of gods all the time, as well as opinions about the concept itself. The whole thing seems like a bundle of human wishes and fears and also just manipulation tactics. And when you combine that with the fact that, as far as I can tell, it has basically nothing compelling to back it up, and that there's a bunch of weird psychological tactics built in just to keep people believing it because it's pretty clear that the actual evidence isn't there, and the fact that there's thousands of different gods that people have believed in or do believe in right now, and they all believe equally fervently, and they all insist that their God's the one true God, and everybody else is wrong, and they know it with absolute certainty. There's no possibility that any of them could be wrong, but none of them can provide any better reasons than any of the other ones can. And the fact that the majority of things that have ever been explained by gods have now been better explained scientifically, well, to me it becomes pretty reasonable to start making some inferences about what might actually be going on here. Here we have a hypothesis that's been shot down at every turn, except in the most extreme cases that we still don't quite understand, like the origin of the universe. The only evidence for this thing is, look, there's a gap, I don't know how that works, and some logical arguments that are incredibly shaky at best, mostly based on someone's assertions about the way the universe works, which also are not backed up. Any scientific theory that had fared this badly would be immediately tossed in the garbage, rightfully so, and considered a complete failure, but for some reason we're supposed to take this one seriously, I guess because a whole bunch of people find it emotionally appealing and fits nicely into their intention-seeking minds. Well, no, to me it's not even a serious idea, it's just a bunch of, or that sounds nice, or I'm scared, I wouldn't like the world without this thing. So in my opinion, it's most likely not true. It meets all the criteria and more that I would need to call anything else untrue. And of course I could be wrong. Anything I think is most likely not true I could be wrong about. I could be wrong about the trans-dimensional tree portal teleporting, dream-communicating Sasquatch spirits too. But you know what? I'm pretty sure they don't exist. I'm also pretty sure there's no ghost standing behind my chair right now. I'll go out on the limb. I'll take the massive risk of being wrong on that. If I'm shown to be wrong in the future, okay, well, my bad. But I'm still pretty sure I'm making the right assessment right now based on the information I have right now. And you know what? Even if I didn't want to go out on the limb, even if I didn't think it was more likely than not that the thing doesn't exist, I would still be of the opinion that it warrants deep skepticism. And that's largely because of, not in spite of, what the people arguing for it have presented to me. So, like I say, I got opinions. I don't know if I'm part of the atheist. I always thought of myself more as an individual than part of some sort of singular agglomeration with other people with similar views.
The only way you can have an opinion about God is if you received a tradition. But without a tradition, you have an opinion about God?
Well, yeah, I have my own mind. I can have my own thoughts. What do you mean I need a tradition? What, I can't think about a topic without somebody telling me what to think?
You don't even know why your mother hates you.
Huh?
You got psychological problems. You don't know why you want what you want, or why you can't get what you want, or why you're not successful. But you know about God? Come on.
You're confused about question X, but you have an opinion on question Y? What are you, stupid? Okay, I think that's all I have to say about that. Can we go back to why my mother hates me? Where'd that come from?
So what does the atheist say? And Dawkins actually admitted this in an interview. I think Ben Stein. You know about Ben Stein?
Yes, but I choose not to. I know that's a contradiction. I don't care.
He interviewed him. He says, you don't believe in God? He says, no. No God? No. Not the Christian God? No. Not the Muslim God? No. Not the Jewish God? Not the Buddhist God? No.
Not quite an accurate list, but that's okay, I'll forgive that. Can't expect you to remember every god or every religion's god that he asked about. The point is, he said, you don't believe in any god. So that little bit of inaccuracy is fine, totally acceptable, as long as the point you actually want to get to here is right. Now what you're talking about is that interview with Dawkins in Ben Stein's movie Expelled, about which I think more than enough has been said over the years. The point is, it's your typical few heavily edited clips from a probably much longer interview, done for no purpose other than to make one side look stupid and the other side look smart, to promote some kind of an ideology, in this case creationism. The funny thing is, when I watch it, it doesn't even succeed at that, because I can pretty much guess what Dawkins was saying in between the cuts, just because I can infer the full context of what he's trying to say. I've heard a lot of this kind of stuff before, but to a young Earth creationist who just sits down and watches it and doesn't think about it any further, some of the stuff he says probably does come off as strange. Anyway, I'm not trying to get off on a tangent about the movie or the interview. The point is, I know what interview you're talking about. I've seen the whole thing. I've watched it again for this. So please, go ahead. Tell me where it goes from there.
So where did everything come from? And by now he had gotten under his skin and he says, look, I don't know. I don't know if there is or there isn't a God. How am I supposed to know? All I'm saying is I don't want to put all my hopes on one idea. What a confession.
Wow, that's... Okay, it's not much of a confession either. I'll get to that in a second, but I think more importantly, that's a complete and total lie in the sense that he never said that. At least not that ever made it into the movie. Is there some kind of extended cut of this that I'm not aware of? Not that I've ever been able to find. No, but in the interview in the movie, what happens is Stein asks him, do you believe in this God? Do you believe in that God? And then, of course, Dawkins says no to all of it. And then Stein says, I just wanted to make sure you don't believe in any God anywhere. And then within the same shot, without even cutting, he says to Dawkins, okay, so what if you died and you came face to face with God? What would you say?
I assume. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure you don't believe in any God anywhere.
No.
What if after you died you ran into God?
And then they end the interview talking about that. Now, again, who cares about defending Dawkins? That's his business. But I do find it relevant to point out just how willing you are to outright make stuff up. I mean, there was not a hint of anything like what you said in that interview. Now, actually, you know what? I'll take that back just a little bit, because it is possible, human memory being incredibly fallible, that maybe Dawkins said something like that somewhere else, sometime else, and you just mixed it up in your head. But frankly, considering what your attitude has been throughout the videos that I've watched of you, the number of lies and straw men and fallacies and contradictions and misrepresentations, the total disdain for truth and any way to actually discover the truth, as opposed to wishful thinking and popularity and authority. Considering all that, excuse me if I'm just a little bit skeptical about your honesty. But now let's go a little bit further through the video, and then we'll talk about why I don't think this is a ridiculous thing to say anyway. Although I do have issues with the phrasing, which I'm pretty sure is your phrasing.
So you hear what atheism is? Atheism is not an intellectual opinion. Atheism is the insecurity of trusting one principle. Like I said, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket.
Okay, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket is a much better way to put it than I don't want to put all my hopes on one thing. The hopes one is clearly loaded language and not the sort of thing I could ever see Dawkins saying about God belief. But yeah, so basically the idea there being stated by Dawkins or somebody else or nobody and you just made it up, whoever, is in the absence of sufficient evidence that makes one idea likely true to the exclusion of others, it's not a good idea if you want to actually be right to just pick one thing, whatever you like the best, and start believing it outright. If you have a set of 2 or 10 or infinite possibilities for, say, the origin of the universe, and you're not sufficiently convinced by the evidence for any particular one to say that it's far more likely true than the others and likely to be true in its own right, then if your first concern is to believe true things and not believe false things, your course of action should and will be to not believe any random one of the things in that pile, which in this case includes the God one. That is an intellectual opinion. The importance of the role of doubt in filtering out incorrect information before it enters your brain, before you start believing that it's true. That intellectual opinion is skepticism. You say atheism is the insecurity in trusting one principle, by which you mean settling on a single belief about something. It's weird how you put that, trusting one principle. I mean, I am trusting one principle. That principle is skepticism. But okay, for the purposes of the next few seconds, trusting one principle means believing one thing. Well, yeah, if you trust one principle for not good reasons, how can you be secure in that belief if you're pretty sure your reasons aren't good? Why would you even want to be? That belief shouldn't be secure. It should be exposed in your head and questioned until it's pared down to the parts that are likely true or removed altogether. Figuring out what's true isn't just a process of pulling marbles out of a hat. It takes actual work. You have to actually try to do it, and you have to be pretty ruthless about it, at least if you want to be successful. You can't spare ideas from examination, analysis, criticism just because they feel nice to you, or intuitive, or meaningful, or important, or whatever you think they are. It's all up for questioning, and if you don't have really solid reasons to believe that something is almost certainly true, why would you? The priority is not to believe that thing, the priority is to believe whatever's true, and not to believe what's false. And if what's true happens to be that thing, and you have good reasons to think so, well then fine. But if you don't have those reasons, why would you just implement it as a belief inside your head, as if you do have good reasons? And I think more importantly, why would you exclude all the other ideas just because you happen to gamble on this one? That's the thing about putting your eggs in one basket, or about putting your eggs in any basket, all the baskets, whatever. Just keep your eggs in the fucking carton. Figure out what basket they actually belong in first, and then put them in.
That comes from being damaged. What, did people lie to you when you were a kid? What happened?
Well, of course people lied to me when I was a kid. They lied to you when you were a kid too, I'm sure. People lie. People can tell what they think is the truth and not know what the truth is and so be wrong. People can be emotional and irrational and cling to things that maybe deep down inside they don't even think is the truth. But less deep down inside, they kind of think it's the truth. People can be confused, is what I'm saying. It's not so black and white as to whether you believe something or don't believe it all the time. But yeah, the things people say can be incorrect, and they are often. People can tell you something that they deeply, sincerely believe, or that they feel like they should believe, or feel like they kind of do believe, or that they just flat out don't believe. And it's not your responsibility to figure out what's in their head, it's your responsibility to figure out if it's true, so you can decide whether it meets the criteria needed for an idea to enter your head as likely true. And this goes back to the "you're an atheist about all the gods except one" thing. As you said, there's all these other religions, all these other gods, and you reject them all. They haven't passed your criteria to enter your head as likely true. Just like how your idea, just like all of their ideas, has not met the criteria to enter my head. What, should I just start believing things that I don't believe, that I don't think are likely true, in fact that I think are likely not true, just to avoid you accusing me of insecurity, of being damaged, of being unintelligent, of being childish, of not believing what everyone else in the universe believes? Should my entire conception of what's true and false about reality be based on your insults? I don't think so. I'm much more concerned with what reality has to say about itself than what you have to say about me or reality.
Why are you so untrusting?
Why are you so concerned that I trust you? In fact, why is that even necessary? If this thing is so obviously true, why do I have to listen to you? What have you ever done to earn my trust? And I don't just mean trust on an interpersonal level, and I don't just mean you. What has anyone in this world ever done that should convince me that they have the correct version of knowledge of what happens after you die, what the meaning of human life is, where we come from, the fundamental nature of all of reality, the origin of the universe, the objectively correct answer to every single conceivable ethical question, what my and everyone else's purpose is in life? Basically, one step shy of omniscience. Why should I trust anyone who claims to have this? I got all these different people proclaiming their absolute knowledge of all these different answers, most of them mutually exclusive, sometimes internally contradictory. Why should I believe any particular one of them? What has anyone done to make me think that they have a better reason to think they know these things than I do? As far as I can tell, the answer is nothing. You've sat at a table in a few videos insulting me, and you've told me all about your wishful thinking while insisting that it's not wishful thinking. That doesn't make me think you know something I don't know, and I've had a similar impression of everybody who's made these enormous claims about all the amazing things they know. They always come off as distinctly unimpressive and unworthy of my trust, unworthy of my belief that they have all the answers to all the questions. And this shit you're doing right now of saying, why are you so distrustful? Are you damaged? Who hurt you? You not believing me just shows how insecure you are. Is a great demonstration of exactly what I'm talking about. You're not trying to convince me that you have really good reasons for what you believe, and I should believe you for those reasons. You're just trying to manipulate me into it by trying to attack my pride. It's not very effective.
Yeah, they told me there was a Santa Claus and there's not, so okay. So it's not even an opinion. It's a defense. I just don't want to end up with egg on my face.
It's a defense against getting egg on my face? Well, if by egg on my face you mean being completely disastrously wrong for years and years on end, yeah, why would I want to be wrong about a question of this magnitude? What, you're just fine with that? You don't even care if it's true or if you have good reasons to think it's true? You just believe it because, I don't know. I wouldn't want someone to accuse me of not wanting to get egg on my face by being wrong about everything. I mean, it's better to just believe any old horse shit as long as it lets me avoid people accusing me of using a defense mechanism. Fuck the truth, I'm just worried about school ground name calling. That's not what it is for you, is it? It's not just fear of being accused of some sort of silly thing like that. Surely. Please.
So if I believe in God and then it turns out that there is no God, I'll be so embarrassed.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with valuing the truth for the truth's sake or anything. I mean, why would I do that, right? Nobody does that. The truth? Nobody cares about the truth. It's current year. Get with the times. Elevating the truth itself as something that matters to you for its own sake. What are you, like a dumb, insecure asshole? What, did Mummy tell you that Santa Claus exists and then he didn't? Dude, if we can't even agree that we want to believe things that are true and not believe things that are false, that that's a priority for both of us, how can we ever have a conversation? We're people with two different ideas about what's true, and we're trying to talk about it, but the whole time, just like, why do you care? Don't you want egg on your face? Why are you so untrusting? Why don't you just accept my opinion as true for no reason? What, are you embarrassed to be wrong? Little insecure little atheist. Just do it. Just believe me. What, are you scared? What is this, Rabbi? Some kind of a schoolyard dare? What next? Are you going to offer me $1 to eat a worm?
That's not an opinion. So there really are no atheists. There are people who trust in God, believe in God because it makes sense. You got to start somewhere. Whatever that start is, that's God. So you want to call him a subatomic particle? Call him whatever you want.
Okay, we've been over this stuff already in the previous video. I'm not going to touch on it too much more here. But I just cannot believe the level of dishonesty and manipulation on display. Truth, reasoning, all of that doesn't even enter the picture. Just insults, snide remarks, emotional attacks, and then once again trying to redefine every idea about the origin of the universe as God, to define non-believers into his belief. Again, Rabbi, it doesn't matter what definition you use. Go ahead. Redefine the word God as broadly as you want. Make it so broad it means nothing. Define it to mean everything that's ever existed. Okay, well now you've destroyed the usefulness of a perfectly usable word. That doesn't change the fact of what we're talking about, of what we're actually disagreeing about. It just makes it harder to talk about it. And I know you don't care, because that's the whole point, but I'm still going to complain about it.
But what you're saying is the whole world began because there existed a subatomic particle. I don't know if he enjoys being called a particle, but whatever. You can call him whatever you want. But that's your God.
Okay, subatomic particle, I know, ridiculous. Terminology aside, again, because hey, you can call it whatever you want. Scientific explanations for the universe are not just a relabeling of God. A God that enjoys being called things and wants to be called he and not a subatomic particle. And in some sense, living entity with a mind that cares about stuff. But you just put it forth as though it is. That thing you call a subatomic particle probably doesn't enjoy being called that. Okay, whatever the initial state of the universe was from a current scientific perspective, didn't like or dislike being called anything because it didn't have a mind. The reason you're ascribing those characteristics to it is because you're saying, no, it's God you believe in, the thinking, feeling being that likes stuff and dislikes stuff. And all of that science stuff, that's just really a way to tack another name onto it. Yeah, but it's not, though. It's an actually different idea. It's not what we're talking about when we're talking about your idea. A God. It's not the idea of a God that I've ever heard of from any religious person ever. When they say they believe in God, they don't mean they believe that the universe had an initial state that was small and mindless and unintentional. That's not what a God is. That's not what the word means to anyone. You included, which is why you still assume that it has feelings about stuff, even while you're talking about a totally mindless, unintentional origin.
To the scientist, to the evolutionist, God is a subatomic particle. We happen to believe that that subatomic particle is intelligent. That's all.
That's far from all. Come on now. But yeah, you believe the thing that caused the universe was intelligent because you believe in a God. Because that's what a God is. Look, rewrite the entire English dictionary if you want. That doesn't make atheism anything more like your religion. It doesn't turn atheists into theists. It doesn't make scientists into the equivalent of rabbis. Intentionally confusing the debate by trying to make people use different words to express to you what they think or don't think doesn't make them suddenly think what you think. Just because you're willing to change the meanings of all the words in the language to suit whatever you find convenient in the moment, that doesn't change anything about the ideas we're talking about. They're the same as they were.
So everybody has their God.
No. Also, my eggs aren't in the subatomic particle basket either.
The question is, have you heard from him? Does your subatomic particle have anything to say to you?
If my thing was the subatomic particle, no, why would it? It would be a subatomic particle, not a god. Not any kind of thinking, communicating entity.
No? What kind of God is that?
Yeah, Rabbi, I know. What kind of god is that?
But that's your God.
Is it? But what kind of god is that? Alright, so there's a bunch more stuff in this video. It's kind of drawn out and boring, so I'm going to skip the majority. The last thing I want to look at is something close to the end, where Rabbi Friedman kinda tries to provide some kind of reason to believe in God.
The belief in God has always been everywhere. Don't tell me there's no God. It's a silly statement. It's like ridiculous. It's not even a leap of faith anymore. It was a leap of faith in the early years. But after God has been discussed for at least 5,000 years, tell me there's no such thing. It's so preposterous. There's no such, we've been talking about it for 5,000 years, but there's no such thing. That is unbelievable.
How's that for a reason to believe? A few phrases come to mind. One of them is appeal to antiquity. I think more relevant is the term sunk cost fallacy. That might not be exactly the concept I'm looking for, but it's definitely close. We've put so much into this. We've spent so long talking about this. We've made it our entire identity for generation after generation. It can't just turn out not to be true now. All that time, all that effort, what about that? Well, what about it? If people were wrong, they were wrong. If they were wrong for 5,000 years in a row, they were still wrong. Who cares? Just the fact of something being believed for a long time or being talked about for a long time doesn't make it true. Just like how in the last video I said it's not a democracy, it doesn't matter how many people believe it. It's also not some kind of a game of counting up tokens in the form of years. Whoever spent the most years rambling on about their idea doesn't win. They don't get the prize of their ideas suddenly being true, just because they've spent a lot of time repeating the same nonsense. If I roll a die and don't look at it and cover it with a cup, and then start repeating to myself, it's a 6, 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 it's a 6. And then my friend walks into the room 2 hours later and starts saying, no, it's a 4, it's a 4, it's a 4, it's a 4, it's a 4. I don't become right just because I've been repeating it for longer than he has. And, I highly doubt that anyone in my audience actually thinks this is a valid way to determine what's true, but unfortunately I have to say it anyway despite it being unbelievably obvious, because apparently Rabbi Friedman never got the memo. I don't know how this even happens, but there it is. So thank you for watching. If you would, please give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. If you like the channel, please do consider supporting, even with like a couple bucks a month. It helps a huge amount. And thank you so much, all of my supporters who've already made that choice. For early access, sign up to the email list at list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.